in the summertime, in the September when we first started, you see, Ted said to me, that was my brother, he was 2 years older than me. By that time, I was 9 and he was 11. And we used to go out for a walk. Sometimes we'd go fishing. We used to do these jars with a piece of string, and we'd got nets and we'd go off to fish. But sometimes we would just go for long walks. On a hot summer's day, like in 1917, when it was a hot summer's day and we'd walked 3 miles to Wast Hills, we'd take our shoes and stockings off and dangle our feet in the canal, you see, and sit on the edge of the canal. And my mother always gave us our tea to take with us. And Ted, of course, in the Boy Scouts, he'd got a haversack, and he used to wear it on his back, and he always carried the sandwiches and the drink and everything. When we got to the canal, we'd sit on the bank and eat our tea. And then sometimes you could hear a boat coming down. Of course, there was no towpath through the tunnel. The barges coming through, the people on the barge used to lie on their backs and leg it through, and we could hear the tap, tap, tap as their feet hit the wall of the canal.
Don't you see the sky? Boys, we'll harvest American. Now it's sung into the Lincoln. So boys, ho, boys, yes, boys, now, boys.
And my brother would say, "Oh, here's a boat coming," and we'd hurry and get into our stockings. We didn't seem to worry about our feet being wet. I straight went into the stockings and shoes or boots, and we'd be standing there waiting for the boat to come through, and it'd come, and oh, beautifully they were coloured in those days, the living quarters especially, brightly painted, and we particularly used to look for the water urn. It was like a great big pot that used to stand outside the living quarters, and whether it was enamelled or not I don't know, but they were all in bright colours, all beautiful. We used to think they looked lovely. Now sometimes there would be children, and they would come to the edge of the boat and talk to us. Some of those children I don't think ever went to school, but they would talk to us. And there was nearly always a dog, and the dog would bark at us, and the man always had a red handkerchief, spotted red handkerchief round his neck. On those days when we were walking, we went across Branwood End and on the way to Wast Hills, and on the way there was an empty cottage. Now it had been a farm worker's cottage, but nobody had lived in it for a good many years. The front door was on one hinge, and it was just one room with a big black grate in it, and then a kitchen which had got a pump for the water, so I presume they'd got a pump and a well outside. There was a pump or something that they got the water. And then there was one room upstairs. Well, I only ever went up the stairs once because they creaked so loud, and Ted would say, "Don't you come up because it's dangerous." But he always went. He always went upstairs and had a look upstairs. And we'd go into the sitting room, and in the corner, in this, just the one room it was, in the corner there were piles of wood that the tramps or whoever it was had brought and put into the corner of the room, you see. And there were always piles of clothes here, there and everywhere, old boots and shoes and all sorts of things. And we never touched them, but we always stood and looked what there was, you see. But whenever we used to call it the haunted house. And when we were going along the lane, my brother would say, "Are we going in the haunted house?" "Yes, let's go in the haunted house." And we'd always go in if we went that way. But along the roadway we used to meet tramps. Now you don't see tramps today. They're travellers, aren't they, what you see today, and got their own cars. But these were single tramps, just on their own. And there was one man in particular that we used to meet quite often, and he'd got a billycock hat on his on his head, you see, and we called him Billy Bowler. We called him Billy Bowler. We used to watch him, but he never ever looked at us. He'd pass us in the roadway and never look in our direction at all. But we always looked well at him, you see. And he'd got a long grey coat on and a haversack, big army haversack, a big round army haversack on his back. And hanging from that was a frying pan. I suppose he'd got all his blankets and everything, all his possessions were in that great big bag, you see. And he wore big hobnail boots. Oh, hefty boots they were, but the sole had come away from the toe, and there was a 2-inch space, and you could see his toes, you see. But he had a huge belt round his waist, and he carried all kinds of things in that belt, and our eyes would be on it every time we saw him. He'd got a big chopper and a knife and scissors, and a billy can. The billy can was like a can that he could fill with water and boil on his fire so as to make his cups of tea, or boil potatoes, or boil anything in the billy can, and it had got a lid on that had got a handle on it so that you could use that as a cup. And it was made of metal. We used to take in all the details but about this tramp, you see, and if he'd got something fresh in his belt, we always knew.
Oh, don't you see the sky? Push, boys,